So a lot of people are always really worried about failing basic training, and I just want to let you guys know that that's not the problem. Failing AIT is the problem. What's going on, guys? So today I want to talk to you about failing AIT and what actually happens to you if you do end up failing AIT, because as I said at the beginning of this, going through basic training and failing basic training, in my opinion, that is something that is very unlikely, and the only real ways to do it is to either quit and just give up, or you get injured and you're not going to be able to complete your training. So if you actually just put in the effort, the work and everything, you're going to pass basic training. But when you get to AIT, it's a little bit of a different story. A lot of people might have told you it's similar to college, and that'll vary depending on your MOS and how long your AIT is going to be. So your AIT could be 6 or 7 weeks is probably the shortest, I think, and then it could go all the way up to, I think, just over a year is the longest AIT. Now, before I get into actually what happens when you do fail AIT, what are some of the ways that you can actually flunk out of this? And the first thing is pretty simple. It doesn't really relate towards AIT in general, but now that you've passed basic training, if you fail your PT test at basic training, you can fail every single PT test at basic training and then pass the last one, and then you're good to go. That's not the case for AIT. Whenever you arrive at AIT, you're going to take a diagnostic PT test, which is a PT test that doesn't actually count. So you'll hear different terms. So you'll hear a diagnostic PT test and you'll hear a record PT test. So a record PT test is actually one that really counts. A diagnostic PT test doesn't count. So when you first get there, you're going to take a diagnostic PT test. It's not going to be too big of a deal. But whenever you actually take a record PT test in the Army, if you ever fail two record PT tests in a row, you're going to get chaptered out of the Army. So this is going to include AIT. So if you get to AIT and you fail, you're going to be taking diagnostic tests, and you take a normal PT test, a record PT test, and if you fail that, then what's going to happen is you're going to probably do some remedial PT and everything. Then you're going to take another diagnostic PT test, and then another record. And if you fail that second record PT test in a row, then you're basically going to be put on the chopping block to get chaptered out of the military. It's not a 100% guaranteed thing, but it's pretty likely that that's probably going to happen, especially if you're not anywhere close to passing. Now, the other way that you're going to actually flunk out of AIT, because AIT, you're going to be learning your job. And so if you fail that, if you can't learn your job, then that's how you're going to fail. So what generally happens, it's going to vary a little bit from MOS to MOS. So I'm going to use my personal experience with 25 Bravo. That was my MOS whenever I joined on the enlisted side. That AIT was just under 21 weeks. And what you had to do to fail out of that particular MOS is you had to fail 5 final exams. Throughout AIT, with pretty much every AIT, you're going to have different sections, different courses that you're going to take, and you're going to have to take exams at the end of that. And for me in 25 Bravo, there was around about 8 different classes that would be a couple weeks each. And at the end of those weeks, at the end of that class, you had to take a final exam. And if you failed that final exam, then that counted as one failure. And on your 5th one, I believe it was on your 5th one, I'm 90% sure maybe it was on your 6th one, but I believe on your 5th failure of any exam, then you are no longer going to be able to finish out your AIT, and you're going to basically get transferred out, or you're going to basically be kicked out of the military. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But what I'm talking about here is it's not the same exact test. So what you could do is you'll fail your first exam, then you'll retake it and you could pass it, and then you go on to the next class. And then let's say you go through that class, it's 2 weeks long, you take the final exam and you fail that one. And then maybe you retake it and you fail it again. And then your 3rd time around, you take it and you pass it. So at this point, you failed 3 exams. And then let's say you move on to your 4th class, you fail that one. That's 4 failures. And on your 5th one, you're going to be kicked out of the, in my case, 25 Bravo MOS. Different MOSs, I also want to mention, have different failure rates, right? So I believe 25 Bravo was somewhere around a 5% failure rate, or attrition rate, whatever they call it. So that meant that basically there was around about, it fluctuated a little bit, but around 200 to 250 people were in my company at AIT at any given time. And that would mean that around about 10 of those people were basically on their way to failing out of 25 Bravo school. So different MOSs are going to have different attrition rates. The 68 series, the medical series, those are going to be higher up there. EOD has a very high attrition rate. It's like 80% failure, not 80% pass. It's a really high failure rate. If you think of any other difficult MOS, it's probably going to have a higher up there attrition rate. So you guys, if you want to, you could Google that. You could probably do a quick little Google search, what's the failure rate for, XYZ MOS, and you could probably get that, information if you want it. But generally, the way it's going to work is you're going to have different tests at the end of each of your classes, no matter what MOS you're in, and it will vary on how many tests that you can actually fail, but that's going to be basically the bottom line is, you have to pass so many tests, and if you fail so many tests, either the same one 2 times in a row, maybe that'll be a reason that a specific MOS kicks you out. You can't fail the same test 2 times in a row. For mine, that was okay. Now let's say you are one of those people that actually fails AIT, and you just, for whatever reason, you can't get it. You just don't understand the material. You just don't know what's going on, and you fail however many tests you need to do to actually fill out. Now, what is actually going to happen? Well, the most likely thing that's going to happen is you're just going to get reclassed to another MOS that is by needs of the Army. So you're not going to be able to pick what MOS you want to go to. So if you're like, oh, I'm just going to fail out an MOS because I don't like it and I'm going to pick another one, that's not going to happen. Like, you're just going to fail your MOS. You're probably going to wait around for a couple of weeks or so to figure out what MOS you're going to be assigned, and then whenever you get assigned that MOS, then you're going to go over to whatever base that MOS has their AIT, and you're going to start all over at that specific AIT, and hopefully you don't fail that one. If you fail that MOS, more than likely, if you fail 2 different AITs, what you're probably going to be looking at is getting discharged from the Army. It's not going to be like a dishonorable discharge or anything like that. It's probably going to be like a failure to adapt or something. Just something that's really not positive or negative. It's just going to be a general discharge. So that's probably going to happen to you if you just keep failing your different AITs. But the 2 other things that could possibly happen to you, instead of getting reclassed right away, you might be faced with the option, or given the option, possibly if you have a longer AIT, to actually get, just discharged out of the military right away. I have a friend who this literally just happened to him. The AIT was, basically a year long, made it to the very end, and then failed out, which sucks, like really bad. Whenever you go through like a year of training and you fail like the final test, that sucks. But he was given the option of either, reclassing to another MOS that you're not going to have control over, or getting out of the military, and he chose to actually get out of the military, which is perfectly fine. So you might be presented with that option. I would not guarantee that option to you. For me, whenever I was at 25 Bravo school, the people who were failing out, they did not get given that option. So I wouldn't expect it, but it is definitely a possibility. The other option that I've heard and I have read actually that could happen to you if you're in the Army Reserves or the National Guard and you fail out of AIT, when you're in the Guard and the Reserves, your actual unit is paying for you to be at school. They're paying for you to do that active duty training. So if you fail AIT, if you just stay there as a holdover, and a holdover is somebody who's basically just not doing anything, they're not actually in training. So if they're paying for you to stay there, they're paying active duty pay for you to stay there. So what might happen is if you are reserve or your guard, you might be sent home, sent back to your unit, and then figure out what you're going to do from there. So they're going to probably figure out if they're going to reclass you, or they're going to figure out if they're going to discharge you from the military. So that could be an option, that could happen to you if you're in the Guard or the Reserves, because like I said, if you're in the Guard and Reserves and you're on active duty orders and you fail, they're like, why would we pay out of our pockets for you to just sit there whenever we can just have you sent home, keep you here for probably honestly a couple of months, reclass you, and then send you back to another AIT. So the bottom line here is don't fail your AIT, because what's probably going to happen is you're going to get stuck with a job that you probably don't want to do, and that's no good. And what I want you guys to know, basic training, like I said, is the easy part technically, even though it might be a little bit more stressful, but basic training is the easy part. All you got to do is just put in the effort and you're going to pass. AIT is definitely more difficult. For me, 25 Bravo, that AIT, it was like a little over 5 months long or so. It was definitely more difficult than the majority of my college that I went to with my university for computer science. That MOS was pretty difficult, right? So if you're not willing to put in the work, if you don't know anything about technology, then you're going to struggle a little bit, especially at the beginning. But if you do put in the work, then you're going to be good to go. And that's probably the case for the majority of the MOS. So just put in the work and you're going to be good to go. If you do happen to struggle, maybe just look to your battle buddies, ask them for tutoring help, whatever, but you do not want to fail AIT, because again, you know, it's not up to you anymore. You are not in control of your destiny at that point. So look to your battle buddies for tutoring, whatever. You know, I'm sure your cadre, they're going to help you out if you need help. You know, you can get private tutoring if you want to. So make sure you utilize those options because you don't want to fail out of AIT. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. That would be awesome. If you want to check out some more videos, hit the subscribe button. That would be even better. If you guys have not hit the notification bell button, hit it like now. I'm just kidding. You don't have to hit it right now if you don't want to, but if you do, hit the notification bell button. If you're not following me on Instagram, Snapchat, social media links are right here. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you later.